cartoon began Disc 3 of Season 9. And Disc 3 had some okay episodes. The last two on Disc 3 were my favorite. The cartoon was probably my least favorite. I don't know. Again, it was mostly stories where it's like, I get it, it makes sense, but not the most, comical. Especially the whole thing with Elaine and the cartoon. I was like, meh. I guess maybe because, I don't really read, the newspaper that often anymore. I mean, the only time I did read a newspaper is when I would read the sports page, but, now you got the internet for all that stuff, like, apps and everything, that I, look at for all that news. So that's probably why. But then, of course, I never really got to reading, the comic strips or whatnot. So, yeah, I couldn't quite follow all that story. But the other stuff was okay. My favorite story definitely, of course, was George's. With the whole thing with him dating a woman that everybody thinks looks like Jerry, and it was just slowly haunting him more and more. And then it just blows up all at the end. And then some continuity stuff from Kramer as well, who finally learned, maybe it's best if I just keep my mouth shut. But how long could he really do it for? So, I think the story started off with Jerry and Kramer on the streets of New York, where they see Sally Weaver, who's returned, as she is Susan's old college roommate. The one that, back in the doll, made Jerry carry that fragile package that literally just had just a doormat that said the Costanzas on it. And in putting that a priority over his own luggage first, his jar of salsa that he was going to use for some act, got ruined. And when she came up, she brought the wrong kind, but told Jerry it's the better kind and whatnot. And of course, lots of other things that, again, he just couldn't, she kept messing up for him. So obviously Jerry does not have a good image of this person. And of course, apparently she had moved to New York because she wanted to become an actress. And also she wanted to become a stand-up comedian too. Which he told Kramer before she walked up to them that she's horrible. And she stinks and that she needs to quit. Well, sure enough, Kramer, as we've seen throughout the series, opens up his big mouth and basically mentions to Sally, you stink, you should quit. She was offended, and he goes, at least that's what Jerry says. So he ratted out Jerry in front of Sally. So obviously, Jerry feels embarrassed by it. So he actually asks Sally to meet her for dinner. Well, not anything too special, or lunch, whatever it was. Just to meet her, just to talk it over, to apologize. And he covers up by saying, everyone, it's show business talk. Everybody says you stink, I stink, this, and that. And then he basically, because Sally did leave a message on his answering machine saying that, I'm quitting, thanks for ruining my life. So this was Jerry trying to, talk her out of it, even though he knows she stinks, but he doesn't want to be the reason why that she quits. So he talks her back into it, and it may have been the biggest decision he regret for his life. Because her news routine was basically Jerry Seinfeld, the devil, and was just, doing nothing but just, taking everything that Jerry had said to her in the past week and just, calling him the devil for it. Which apparently the idea of this was because Kathy Griffin, who plays Sally, ridiculed Jerry during her HBO stand-up special and saying that he was rude to her during her appearance in the episode The Doll. And again, I don't know if it's because, based on the character, or if real life Jerry Seinfeld was rude to her, but apparently Jerry was so amused by this that he began showing the clip of her stand-up routine during the audience warm-up before the tapings of the show, and decided to actually incorporate it into an episode. So that's a little awkward to me. So again, I'm not sure if that means that she was ridiculing the character or the real Jerry for real. Of course, this Jerry did not like it. And every time he tried to, talk to her and, she said, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. She just used that conversation to go back to her show and do the same thing. It was so good. But people were loving it so much that one, Newman wanted her autograph, and two, she got her own cable special. something that Jerry was not able to succeed with his Jerry Show pilot and whatnot. So then, of course, that's when Jerry, he basically called her and said, "You're getting no more material from me, no more." What did Sally do? She used that recording as a speakerphone and put, Jerry's head and horns on the little, tape recorder or whatnot. So Jerry basically is shielding himself from her. That way, she runs out of material and her career flops. Unfortunately, that backfired because of the same person. How does that happen? We will find out later. Of course, Kramer's... Well, I'll get to Kramer's because this kind of ties in with Jerry and George's story. So George's story, again, is he's dating this woman, Janet. Very beautiful woman, I would say. But, of course, the thing is everyone keeps saying that she looks like Jerry. Which, George is in denial, but the more people keep noticing it, or, people making jokes about it, it just gets more and more and more under George's skin. And of course, who opens their big mouth and says, and the first person to actually say it to her, Kramer. Kramer says it to her, and she slowly starts to agree as well, which again just freaks out George. He's like, how can he be attracted to someone who looks like his best friend? He's not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. As of course they would say, and the hand motions and whatnot. But as time goes on, of course, it gets more and more under his skin. George tries putting it aside, saying how looks don't matter too much. Even though, funny enough, earlier in the series there was an episode called The Doodle, if you remember, where George dated a woman who also said that looks don't matter. And that actually bothered George because after a doodle she drew of him, he was worried that he thought his girlfriend, who was Paula in the episode, thought he was ugly. But basically, she was just like, it doesn't matter to me. I would, basically, she said, I would do anything with you or whatnot. So, of course, obviously, he was trying to put it behind him and have a great evening with Janet, when Janet, though, realized she had gum in her hair. And they went back to her apartment, and she had to cut her hair a little to get the gum out. But then she cut her hair so short that she basically cut it down to the hairstyle that makes her hair look like Jerry's hair, and she looked exactly like Jerry. So that's when George freaked out, ran out, and basically ended it with her, and he said, "We must never speak of this again," as he says. And then, of course, there's Kramer's storyline, where he obviously, throughout many episodes, with this episode with being a blabbermouth, he was a blabbermouth back in the nose job when he mentioned the thing about George's girlfriend needing a nose job. He also didn't, no one warned him, of course, but he also blabbed to George that everybody saw his girlfriend topless before he did. You get the gist that Kramer always just, says the wrong thing at the wrong time. Well, in this episode, he vowed to take a vow of silence, to keep his mouth shut and be a mute, because he realized what all he's done. Of course, he kept, in the scene where he said he was going to do it, he kept banging into something, hurt himself, and going, starting now, out, starting now, out, starting now. So he continued that until he ran into Sally Weaver at the coffee shop. And this was after Jerry had said that he was not going to talk to Sally anymore, because if he did, he'd give her more material to use on him and whatnot. It's kind of like, I don't know why I decided this, but it was kind of like wherever in one of the Scooby-Doo movies, wherever whenever Fred kept saying stuff about Coolsville, but then the news was editing it to make it look like he was saying it in like a negative way when he wasn't. He'd be like, "You were trying to get me to say that I think Coolsville sucks. No, don't record that." Basically, Jerry couldn't speak a word around Sarah's like, "No, don't use that," basically, or whatnot. Okay, I find a little bit of humor out of this, even though I said at the beginning it wasn't one of my favorite episodes, but I think still, but anyways, we'll get to that story in a second. But basically, Sally goes on and on and on as a super annoying person that she comes across as. Finally, Kramer can't take his oath of silence anymore. He just stops and says, "You need to shut up." And he goes, I'm sorry, I haven't spoken in days. I just got a lot of things on my mind. And then Sally goes, lay it on me, streaming. And basically he tells her some stuff about Jerry. And at the end of the episode, I believe it was Jerry, George, and Kramer sitting in the living room. I think they turned on Sally's show just to see her flop because she had no material from Jerry from the past week. Just for Sally to start, saying something about Jerry, and it's like, did you talk? And he's asking George, did you talk to her? No, we can't be Kramer. He's talking about the silence. But then whenever she said something about, it makes his neighbor feel like, or something like that, that's when they both turn to Kramer, and he goes, starting now, basically. Basically, it's discovered that he was the one who said all that stuff. And then Elaine's story, of course, is, again, the one that I don't know if it's because I don't read the comics or whatnot, but I just didn't get it. Elaine, I guess, is reading the comics, and she found some cartoon in there that she thought that didn't make sense. So she was showing everyone, and nobody could explain it to her. She even went to, and it was made by the New York Times. She even goes to the New York Times, and they even said they can't explain it. But somehow it leads to her getting a brief little gig writing cartoons for the New York Times. And she wrote some cartoon about a pig peeking through the window saying, I wish I were taller. And nobody thought it was funny until Peterman saw it. And he says it was similar to a Ziggy cartoon. So basically it had already been used. I don't know. Like I said, to me, it just, I didn't get it. I didn't get that one. That's one of the stories that I just didn't get. But I feel like I didn't give this episode as much credit. I mean, maybe it's not quite as meh as I thought it was. I said I did think, it was funny. Jerry basically was on guard when Sally Weaver was around, because if he said something, then it's going to be used in the show. Again, it just backfired on him completely. Every time he told her to stop it, she would basically go, he said stop it, he said stop it. And then, of course, George dating the woman who looked like Jerry was just hilarious, I thought. So, okay, cartoon was a little more funnier than I thought, but still not one of my favorite episodes. But, that does that. Countdown's continuing. 11 episodes left. Of course, 9 until the finale, because the finale is a 2-part episode. We're getting closer to the end, guys. That is, though, the cartoon episode. Okay, we have a few more episodes where I'm kind of meh. They're okay, but the last 2 episodes on this disc, I definitely were definitely my 2 favorites on this disc. We'll talk about those, of course, when we get to them. So, guys, once again, what are your thoughts on the cartoon episode? Do you agree with the comic strip storyline was a little meh, or did you like it? Maybe you did. Maybe you got it. If you did, awesome. We think, of course, Sally Weaver ridiculing Jerry on her show, Kramer taking his oath of silence, and do you think George's girlfriend did look like Jerry indeed? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel, and follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day, and peace out, everybody.